No, you don't. So I'm just going to write down names as people come up and speak. So.
Are you Chris?
Yes.
I'm Chuck Ross.
Hey, Chuck.
Oh, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to
Yes,
meet
sir.
you. Good to see you.
Good morning, everyone. If we could, I'd like to call this public hearing to order. I did want to go ahead and read the text of the legal notice as it was published in our legal organ, the Herald Journal, on September 22nd. Today we're here for a public hearing at 9 a.m. to receive public comment on proposed revisions to the Greene County zoning ordinance. The proposed amendments primarily relate to the establishment of appropriate restrictions on and regulation of vacation rental by owner uses, also known as vacation home rentals in Greene County, Georgia. A copy of the proposed ordinance amendment is available for public review during normal business hours in the Greene County Administrative Office here that you're in today. Any person that wants to provide public comment during today's public hearing, you can also submit written comments if you'd like to. If you're not prepared to make comments today, you're welcome to grab my business card that's on the back table. And if you want to submit written comments to me, I will forward all of that to the Board of Commissioners. Again, I'm really here today to receive your public comments. I'm not here to receive questions and provide answers. If you do have any further clarifications you'd like and concerns that you have that you're just not ready to share today, again, just send me that email and I'll relay them to the board as best as I can. Who'd like to come before us today?
I'll go first.
All right.
Need to face you or the audience, either one?
Either.
Okay.
If you could provide your name.
My name is Jerry Hill.
Yes, sir.
I'm a resident of Harbor Club, and I've been known to speak before this board, and I'm not bashful. For those that don't know me, I know the commissioners know me. Let me say I fully support this amendment. I am a observer of this ordinance in place. I am a victim let that rest in and rest assured. I've observed this rental by owner in action. Very upset. My neighbors are upset. My church members are upset of this thing taking place. As a former tax assessor for this county, I've seen what happens whenever the tax revenues are lacking. All you taxpayers, you have to pay for it. This rent by owner, that's revenue slipping away from this county, and these carpetbaggers are putting this money in their pockets and they're hightailing it out of town. You just think about that for a second. This amendment that we're talking about has two things in it that I think needs to be struck. And one thing is that they're excluding PUDs and CPUs. They want to zero out these two big locations to exclude, and that's where a big volume of these rent by owners exist. Now I'm looking around this audience, and I'm not going to zero in on, but I see some special interest represented in this audience. And I don't want to stare too hard, but I think you know who they are, and they represent these organizations. But people that live in these zones rent these properties out, and one right down the street from me advertised on the internet, come rent my property. You can live in this house and we can sleep 34 people. 34, can you imagine that? 34 people in a residence, and we only rent it on the weekend. And by the way, when you look at it, it's locked up for the next 10, 15 weeks. We have a grand old time. Remember, I live in this residence. I observe these people partying and raising hell, and my residents here are not happy. My church members are really upset because they cannot have any peace and quiet. And I've told them from now on, when we hear a peep, we're going to call the sheriff's department, and we're going to start bombarding them with calls. And guess what? Who's going to pay for the sheriff's call? You folks. And we're going to drive them crazy coming out to our residents. Revenue loss, nuisance calls, and this just is not fit. Now, the way I look at it is this. All you folks from Greene County, just like me, are deer hunters. You're sitting out on deer stand. You get a foul odor coming from the woods. You smell something bad. You look out there, you're looking for that black and white creature. You know he's out there. You don't have to see that skunk to know he's there, but you can smell him. Folks, I smell a damn skunk. Think about that before you vote. That's all I got to say, folks.
Thank you, Jared. Someone else?
I have a question.
Yes.
Got a question for me?
No, sir. Well, yes, sir, but no, sir. I think it's important that you tell the folks here how you're going to convey the information that each of these individuals just passed on to you. I mean, I can see you taking some short notes. Are you recording this?
I am. I'm recording this. It's going to be publicly available on the internet. And yes, just for brevity's sake, I'll summarize for the commissioners, but they also know there's going to be a recording and they can listen to that as well.
And you'll make your summary available?
Yes.
To
Sure.
the people that
Yeah.
are here?
Yeah, anyone that wants that, it's always an open record. Anybody else want to make any public comments? Yes, ma'am. If you could come forward, if you don't mind, and state your name.
Sorry,
If you could come forward and state your name,
all the way up there?
if you don't mind.
Okay, I don't do this. I'm Sally Littleton. And, do you need anything else?
No.
Okay. Back in the late 2000s when the economy crashed, we closed our business and we decided to think outside the box. We rented our house on VRBO weekly for 5 years. And we had rules and regulations. We also had a business license. We paid hotel tax, which I'm not sure how the county receives that in the revenue. We said if you ever got a call from the guard or the police or whatever, it was a $500 fine from us. 5 years, we never had any problems. It paid our house, it paid our taxes, our property taxes, and then basically saved us from going into foreclosure or bankruptcy. These short-term rentals, we had a max of 12 people in our house because we could sleep in beds, 12 people if there were 2 and a queen. If the somebody would call up and say, oh, I have 18 people. I'm sorry, you can't rent our house. And you can't do, we didn't have wedding venues, we didn't have rehearsal dinners where people came in to have extra people in the house. It only could have 12 people. Now, yes, if somebody came by boat and visited, I had no control over that. But we never had a call in 5 years. You have to make rules and regulations for the people, and they abide by it. And they didn't want to pay $500, and we didn't want to have, say, rehearsal dinners or anything like that because they could spill wine, they could do all sorts of things. And so, and our house never got damaged the whole time we were there. Nobody did hell raising or anything. I think it's how you do it.
And where do you live?
Well, I live in Greene County now. This was in Tuscaloosa. And if we had our house go into foreclosure in Tuscaloosa, it would affect the property taxes, and so everybody would have lost in our subdivision. We sold our house for $1.4 million in Tuscaloosa, but if we had gone into foreclosure, it would probably gone on the market for $800,000, and that would have affected everybody in the county.
So to be clear, you're for the ordinance.
I'm for doing VRBO and having the rental because it brings in people that go to our restaurants, buy in our stores, they come back. I'm a realtor. They come back, they buy houses because they like the area. There's a lot of people that can't afford a second home unless they do this. Any other questions?
How big was your home?
5,000 square feet.
How many bedrooms?
5. I had a bonus room that had 2 queens in it, so that gave me 12. And I was very particular on how many people. I also did not rent to college kids that were going to go for spring break, and they might have 1 adult in the house. We didn't do that either. Any other questions? Oh, good, I can sit down.
I appreciate that. If you could, direct most of your comments for the commission. I'm not saying that if you don't want to take a question from someone, but you don't have to. It's entirely up to y'all. You can have conversations afterward. But is there anyone else who would like to make some comments for the commission? Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Jenny Van Ostrom-Willett. I'm a realtor here in the county. I own Algen Realty, and I also am a property owner here in this county. I read your ordinances. First of all, let me start by saying I disagree with most of them. I've highlighted every area through the ordinances that infringe on people's personal property rights. As a property owner, not only in Greene County, but in any county, you have personal property rights. These rights are given to you as a property owner. First of all, Georgia has a law that says you cannot and do not have to record your house as a rental home. I saw a lot of houses in this county. A lot of them are for people that want to enjoy it as a vacation home, but also want to rent it from time to time to help pay taxes, upkeep, all the expenses associated with a home. And I think by limiting people's use of a house, it's the complete and utter irresponsibility by the county. If you want to see this county truly adversely affected, go ahead and start limiting personal property rights of owners. Go ahead and start telling people that they cannot rent their house. Go ahead and do it. The restaurants will be affected adversely, all of the restaurants here, all the shopping. You want to go back to 2009? Should we revisit how poor of situation the county was in then, when you couldn't sell a house? Houses were selling for half or a third of what they're worth. I think as property owners, you should be concerned. This will directly affect what you can sell your house for. If you can't sell your house and you are going to limit who can buy it, good luck getting full price. We'll have a gluttony of homes at this market because people who rent them to support the taxes or the insurance or utilities, and I'm not talking renting on a short-term basis. Let's talk about this weekend. I had 14 phone calls from people that live in Florida asking, do I have anywhere that they can rent for the weekend for the hurricane? You know this ordinance? You will no longer be able to rent your house on a few-time basis. I'm just curious how many people in this room live in Greene County and rent their house for masters. Well, sorry folks, you can't do that anymore. Not without following these ridiculous ordinances. I do believe in paying hotel motel tax. I do believe there are proponents and pieces of this ordinance that are viable. But for the most part, this is a shame. And if you want to know what it's going to do to Greene County, go ahead and vote for it. Because you will be amongst many who can no longer sell their house. More than 50% of this county, especially on the lake, is vacation renters. People that come and use it as a vacation home. They may rent it out 3 or 4 times a year. They may rent it out 1 time a year when Masters comes. Those houses will go on the market. Property values will decline. Restaurants will fail. Businesses will continue to be empty. And you will not be able to sell your home. Nor do people that come here, they won't want to buy.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
The majority of people that I know, and I've been here 16 years, are retired people. They're not going to sell their house. They're going to sell their house because of vacation people like you're talking about. And they're going to leave because of people like you that's screwing up their property values. That's the reason they're going to leave. That's the question I have. Answer that, please. Rental homes market.
Well, first of all,
have
sir.
a sole source of income from these rental houses?
Sole sources. The people that I know don't even live here.
I don't own a rental house, but
Yeah,
I
you
do.
do, but where do you live?
We're gonna manage this conversation at all,
Guys,
please.
let's,
Well,
we initially started.
give me an answer. Answer the question. I mean, I'll take
I'd like for you to rephrase the question because I'm confused with what your question
Well,
was.
the question is this. Most of the people, and I'm sorry if I get loud because that's my emotion. That's just the way it
Jerry,
is.
we got really, truly, we need to direct comments to the commissioners.
question I
You see,
have
we're gonna do this for the rest of it, we're gonna
Okay.
get them back and forth. You can ask her after, and that's fine.
Okay, can I ask a question
The
now?
public comment, the public hearing is for the
Well, I
board.
thought you were asking, can I ask the question I have is this.
You can, but guys, this is primarily, you need to
Okay,
relay
the
comments.
question I want to address is to her. The most of the people that I'm associated with, and I've been here for 15 years, in my church,
You need to
my
address it
community,
after, Jerry. You need to, sorry, but this,
Okay,
we
no
can
more
see how
questions
this
then.
will play out if we continue down this. Direct the questions to commissioners. I will relay every bit of that, and this meeting will be available for public review online, as well as that summary. So is there someone else who would like to make some comments, or do you want to make any further comments? Okay.
I'm finished, thank you.
Someone else? Yes, sir. You want to come up to the mic? Ma'am? Ma'am, I'm sorry. I couldn't see you there.
I'm Joyce Kinder, and I have been a realtor since 1997. I have lived in this county for 23 years, and I was a property manager from 2003 until 2008. And I paid hotel tax. I had to send in a form every month to the county. I not only with that saw what was happening here, and we cannot disregard what we have here in the way of people wanting to come here and enjoy what we have. And when they do that, they pay money to do it. And that money is taxes and revenue for this county. Yes, there are people who are problem renters, and they should be dealt with, as well as the owners if they're not going to abide by treating everybody in that area the way they should. No owner should have to experience problems with their neighbors, regardless if it's the neighbor who lives there permanently or the neighbor who is there just to visit. So my thought was that homes that people want to rent, whether it's on Verbo, whether it's just on their own, whether with a property manager, they should be coming through the board, through the county, I'm sorry, to do that. You have to have a business license. Now, maybe that is something that's going a little bit far maybe for some people, but in order to continue for people to rent, then they're going to have some guidelines. These guidelines are way too strict. They don't really fit. But guidelines that I'm thinking of is that you could have people register their homes. I mean, they have to register their homes if they are going to rent them out. They have to be given the motel, hotel tax forms, and they need to be explained to them and what they must do in order to rent those properties. They need to know from the county that if there are instances, this is what's going to happen. You may not be able to rent your home again. But don't throw everybody into the basket. Everybody doesn't have this problem. And I just know that from my own experience in those years that I have rented. I had good tenants. I rented for Masters. I rented for 4th of July. I rented long term. But I wanted to protect the people whose homes I was taking care of. And I didn't want to have a bad situation. And granted, there are some people that don't understand what it means when they rent their home. They just feel like they can just throw it out there and everybody can just come and do whatever they want. Well, they can't. And it is not fair to anybody to have that done. So that's how I feel about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. Does someone else like to come up?
I just want to say one thing. I live in Harbor Club, which you know these guys live in Harbor Club. But I'll tell you, if you don't allow people to rent, you get these control things, your property values will go down. You will lose a ton of money in Harbor Club, rentals. I mean, this is a resort community. It's built on a resort. It's called like a little Hilton Head. With all the golf courses, there's a lot of revenue that comes into this area. And you're gonna kill it.
Someone else like to make some comments? You can please come forward.
Why not? Good morning. Luke Maslow. Did I just get in front of somebody?
Looks like it.
Yeah.
but-
Would you like to?
Can you spell that last name for me? I'm sorry.
Maslow.
Thank you.
It's interesting being behind this thing back. That's better. How is everybody this morning? All right. Let me begin by saying I moved out here a year and a half ago, bought a place at Reynolds, and came out here because I started flying to your local airport. So I spent tax dollars here before I actually ever bought a house. The folks at your airport told me to come check out the Ritz-Carlton. So I'd go down there and I'd have lunch, so I'd spend more of my tax dollars. Folks at the airport said, you should look at Reynolds. You should look at Cuskawilla. You should look at Harbor Club. There's some very cool places around this area. So I rented a car, spent some more tax dollars. Drove around, found a realtor, found a place. here I am a year and a half later wondering what the county is thinking, putting together a list of rules and regulations that clearly, in my humble opinion, favor not only the communities and the developers that have come in here and put these communities in place, but they are specifically and selectively disfavoring individual taxpayers. And that is the fundamental issue I have with this regulation. I pay property taxes. I pay hotel and motel taxes for every rental I do. And by the way, I do like 8 to 10 a year, usually long weekends, wedding season's wonderful. But here's the thing. I have more rules and regulations in the property guide for my home than the ridiculous ones that have been put forward by Greene County in this proposed regulation. I do that because I have a vested interest in protecting my home. I don't want just anyone showing up and renting and having at my place and not respecting my neighbors, not respecting my property, and ultimately it's an investment. There is no more real estate in the world. It's all what we have, and we are all invested in it, or we wouldn't be here right now, whether it's because we're full-time residents or whether it's because we are part-time residents. It's finite. Therefore, we don't want to go back through what happened out here in 2008 and 2009. We don't want to go through what happened in most of the country in 2008, 2009. And I think these regulations will drive us in that direction. The vision behind me says responsible government with the highest standard of ethics and professional conduct. Thus, in my opinion, any attempt to selectively apply rules and regulations on individual taxpayers above and beyond those that are imposed on developers, so eloquently singled out for being successful throughout the many years in this regulation, just doesn't align with that vision. The mission over here says rigorous financial discipline and efficiency and pursuing economic growth. Economic growth is people renting their homes. It's the ability to bring more people to this market, people who will not come here if there is not a place for them to stay. Not everyone is as lucky as I am to be able to have a second place. I absolutely love that I can offset some of those costs. I just had my home repainted. It's got a new roof. It's got new HVAC. It's got new interior paint. That house hadn't been touched in 20 years when I bought it. And I was able to do that because I am renting my home part-time on these short-term rentals that have been selectively posed as causing a detriment to the county. The establishment of neighborhoods and homes in the region provide the ability for higher taxes. I pay only about $1,000 more a year in taxes in Atlanta than I do here at the lake. That is because this community can support those higher taxes. Those higher taxes support good quality services, which the Board of Commissioners and those elected officials here in the county oversee. And that's okay. It's how we have the number 3 school system in Georgia. It's how we have the people who are coming out here and building their dream homes on these pieces of property that are an acre big and the houses are enormous. Thank them. I love them. They should do that more. If they want to rent it out, I think that's fine too. But long after the developers have come and gone, it's the individual taxpayer who provides the steady stream of income and revenue to grow this area further. If developers hadn't come along, we wouldn't have the area. If the individual taxpayers didn't come along after the developers, we wouldn't have what we have today, and it wouldn't be continuing to grow. I see that progress. I see a Dairy Queen going up. I see new construction, storefronts getting filled. That happens because people come and spend their dollars here in Greene County. Bottom line, whether they're taxpayers and own a place or whether they are visitors, they are spending dollars here. And to selectively single out the individual beyond the corporation is to forget the schools, businesses, and county services exist because of the individual taxpayer. There are other reasons the commissioners should be wary of instituting or adopting regulations that affect individual taxpayers. Number one, and you've heard this several times, property values can decline and will. You lose tourism dollars. These shops, these restaurants, these places we all go and frequent, we're not enough. Those of us who are here full time are not enough to keep those establishments in business. It is short-term rentals. It is the people who come and respect the properties they're in, behave like grown adults, and act like respectable citizens who make this place what it is. The potential for additional administrative and overhead costs for the commission to administer the oversight of hundreds of vacation rentals a year just doesn't make sense. It's not fiscally responsible. The driving of business outside Greene County to other counties will generate tax dollars for them, not for Greene County. I can drive 5 miles down the road and I can cross the line into Putnam County. What do you think is going to happen? Where do you think the dollars are going to go? Do we want Lake Sinclair to be nicer than Lake Oconee? Then go ahead, pass the regulation, because I think that's what will happen. They're tearing down that power plant and that smokestack. In fact, it's going down tomorrow, now delayed, I think, until next week. That is going to change property values and people's perspective of that part of the county, or that part of the state, in that specific county. It's going to make people think that is not so much an industrial place to be any longer. And if we chase the business out of Greene County, drive 5 miles down the road, go to Putnam County, you can go to Lake Sinclair, and that's where the dollars will go. We already have a noise and occupancy regulation here in the county. Embedding one within another rule or regulation just doesn't make sense. It's unnecessary, and it creates a layer of bureaucracy that I hoped to escape when I left Atlanta and came to Greene County, because I deal with that all the time in DeKalb. I deal with it all the time in the city of Atlanta. That is not what I think we are attempting to do here. Small government, fiscal responsibility, letting the individual's rights speak forth is what I think is most important. I'd urge the council to carefully consider the impacts of regulations, looking at other similar communities that have done this before, and more specific attention be paid to the required support services and services cost that go along with this regulation, or that are the impetus behind this regulation being formed. Nothing's perfect. I saw something someone posted recently about if you take out all the warring neighbors, the number of incidents is less than one a month for all of the communities in this particular area. What cracked me up about that wasn't the fact that it was less than one a month. It was the fact that there are warring neighbors causing more problem for the city and county services than there are by those who are coming here short term and bringing their tax dollars. Again, I think that this regulation is inappropriate. It's overly excessive, and I think respectable rules and regulations around how people rent their homes should be left up to the individual. Bottom line, bring the people, bring the dollars, grow the town. It's a really simple formula, folks. Bring the people, bring the dollars, grow the town. It doesn't get any more basic than that. It's supply and demand. There is a limited supply, and there is a growing demand. Let's be where people's dollars come. Let's grow the county. Let's not chase them away, and do what is not in the best interest of everyone who's here full-time, part-time, or visits. Thanks.
My name is Joe Jones. I have a real estate company, Joe Jones and Company. 5-6 years ago, I started a vacation rental program. I ran that business for 3 years. My daughter and I, Tiffany and I ran it. She owns it now. It's At Home Vacations. We have about 40 homes. Every one of them this weekend is full because of the hurricane. We had places that are not normally rented this time of year, and we were able to accommodate a lot of families from this hurricane this weekend. So that's number one. I don't think I can top anything that you just said. Everything on my notes was what you said, but here's a question for you. Who's going to pay for policing these ordinances? Is the board or the commissioners, are they going to go to every house to see that a sketch of each parking space is in that home? Are they going to go in and see that there is one bed that can sleep 2 people in each room? These are the type of ordinances that are in here. You can only sleep 12 people? That's ridiculous. I'm just saying. Okay. Who's gonna go in there? Are you gonna go in there, sir? Are you gonna go into every single one?
I expect you to do it. If you don't do
Really?
it, the zoning man will give you a fine, honey, if you don't do it.
Oh, thank you. Don't call me honey. Don't call me honey.
You can ask me a
Ms.
question.
Joe,
Okay.
if we could, let's avoid the back and forth. You could just direct the comments.
Don't call me honey.
Pardon?
Don't call me honey.
I won't call you honey if you don't point your finger.
Jerry, let's not, Ms. Joe, you can just direct the meeting, please.
This gentleman also said he had his house painted, roof put on. Those are jobs. Those jobs pay taxes. Okay? The tax revenue generated from these vacation homes is significant. We've always paid our motel tax. This weekend, I counted just under $3,400. This weekend, from our homes, we have 40 homes in and around this area. $3,400. One weekend, 2 days. Everybody's been to Publix on the 4th of July. Nobody wants to go on the 4th of July because everybody else is there, okay? All those people are coming in and giving their dollars to your county. Every one of them. Are there bad apples? Absolutely there are. But why throw the baby out with the bathwater? Okay? This is good for Greene County. It's a resort area. People come here to try before they buy. And that's how they do it. Because we provide the homes, nice homes, for them to do that with. And really, that's about all. You actually said everything that needed to be said. But this creates jobs and brings tax dollars from every aspect of this county. And to enact these ordinances for a few, because somebody had their panties in a wad because there was a noise next to his house, is ridiculous. I was here 3 years ago. We discussed this very same thing, and here I am back at doing it again. Ridiculous.
Like to come forward?
My name's Joe Martin. I do not live in Greene County, but I have in-laws who do. And I was asked to speak about this. I looked over the rules and regulations, and personally, you know, I can go either way. You can either have restrictions or you not have restrictions on individual property rights. That's up to the commissioners. What I think is important is that if you have anything, you have equity across the board. Equity across the board. What do I mean by that? I mean equity across incomes and housing values. I mean equity about the constraints and definitions of sound. And I mean equity about what is a vacation home, the definition of a vacation home. So those three areas, I think the current restrictions are flawed if you're going to apply them. Let me give you an example. As I said, my in-laws live in Greene County, and perhaps they wanted to rent their home out for masters, and they put it on Airbnb, an internet rental, no local contact. It is a secure area they live in. So they rent it out for masters. 2 couples, 2 cars, plenty of room in their driveway, couples are there. Over here in a special area, they don't have to apply for a restriction. My in-laws have to pay $150, they have to be inspected, they have to put in a fire extinguisher, they have to post something for this one-time rental for masters. Over here, these people don't have to do anything. Maybe they're going to have 34 people for masters. They come in, they don't have to have fire extinguishers. They don't have to notify how many cars they can have. They don't have to do anything. That's inequity. Okay? So the 4 people were in my in-laws' house, and they go to bed, 2 o'clock in the morning, the air conditioner goes on. Any sound. The criteria is any sound. The next door neighbor, oh, they're making noise again. And they got those vacation people in there. Calls the police, calls the sheriff. They come, hey, you got to stop, wakes them up, say, you got to stop making noise. What noise are we making? Well, you making noise. It's not properly defined what any sound means. There's 25 feet from the property line at night. It's a joke. A pool pump, an air conditioner, any sound. Come on. My question is, what is the sound restrictions for any normal residency in Greene County? If that's the sound restriction for any residence in Greene County, no noise, any noise, 25 feet from the property line, then fine. But I don't believe that's what it is in Greene County. So they leave, the people leave. It's the only time my in-laws rent their house, Masters Week. They don't have to pay federal tax. In fact, the federal government does not recognize a vacation home until you rent it for more than 2 weeks out of a year's time. You don't have to pay federal tax. You don't even have to declare that income. But here in Greene County, one night you rent your house out, or as the lady said, 2 nights for the storm, and you got to pay $150. You got to get a fire extinguisher. You got to get your house inspected. You got to post a notice of all the things you got to do. It's just not equitable. You're just not following what the standards are, what the proper standards are. You ought to be equitable across the board. So let me summarize. Equitable. If you're going to have restrictions, if you're going to make people pay $150, if you're going to have a zoning inspector come in and check your sheets, check your beds, check your fire extinguishers, those are all good things, I guess. Make sure you got enough windows. Your basement apartment has a window so that people can get out. What about fire escapes for the second floor? I mean, you can put in all kinds of restrictions to make sure people are safe. But it ought to be equitable if it's a safety issue, if it's a protection issue, protection of people, it ought to be equitable across the board. This excuse that some areas don't have a lot of complaints, so we ought to excuse them, is unfair to the lady back here that says she never had a complaint. Why can't you excuse anybody that never had a complaint? You're using one criteria for a special PUD, the haves, and another criteria for the other people, the have-nots. That's not equitable. The sound restrictions, any sound, really bugs me. If that's the noise criteria in Greene County, okay. Then everybody, residences and renters alike, go by the same criteria. That's all it ought to be. It ought to be the same for everybody, equitable. And 2 weeks per year, one day, you know, if you rent your place out for 1 or 2 days a year, you shouldn't have to jump through these hoops. It ought to be just like the federal law. 2 weeks, you get a free pass. That's all I got to say. Equitable across the board. If you have it, make it for everybody. If you don't have it, and do like this man does or that lady does. Post what you want to do to protect your property and let it go from there. Thank you very much.
Anyone else want to speak?
I'm Dick Schmidt, and I'm here for the Board of Realtors. So we've looked through this this ordinance, or this proposed ordinance, and my initial impression is that we're using a stick of dynamite to take care of a sliver that you could use a tweezers for. You know, everybody here is right in saying that it is a huge economic engine that is of great benefit to the county, and it's not something that we should put in, you know, excessive regulations that make it unfeasible or impossible to have this economic engine. But on the other hand, there are valid issues that Mr. Hill has had, and that other people from time to time have. But here's what we found when the first ordinance came out. We did a little bit of research, and we went through and looked at all of the 911 calls in the county for a year, from the 14 and 15 years. And we found that there was one place that had 15 calls, and there was a couple other miscellaneous calls that went to 911 that could reasonably be attributed to VRBO or other types of rentals or just loaning property. But throughout all of Greene County, for a year or a year and a half's time, to get 2 or 3 calls, I wouldn't say that was such a terrible problem for the county that we have to put an ordinance in place. Now, this ordinance starts out by making a statement that presumes that VRBOs are injurious to the health of our property owners, and that's just not the truth. Truly, there are people that do have a problem, but this is overkill in a lot of ways. So when we started looking through the ordinance, the first thing we found is that there is a code section, and I'll give you all of this, Chris, but it's a specific code section. Here's what it says, is that no local government is authorized to perform investigations of residential rental properties. And so all of the stuff in the ordinance where they're going in and making sure that you're complying with is illegal for them to do. The second thing it says, in no event may a local government require the registration of residential rental property. And with that code section, what that does is it takes about a little over half of the stuff out of this ordinance. And so the first problem with the ordinance, Chris, is that, you know, most of it's illegal. The substantive parts of it is illegal, and what you're doing is that you're inviting a lawsuit. And believe me, there is a lot at stake here, and you will have an avalanche of lawsuits if you ever pass this and ever try to enforce it in any way. The second thing that it does is it creates a huge bureaucratic nightmare for Byron Lombard back there in the back. I mean, he or his designee are required to do most of the working and there's no way that anybody can handle. There's more than 300 of these things in the county. You know, it's not realistic for the county to think that they're going to create the bureaucracy necessary to do all of the illegal inspections and illegal enforcement and illegal registration. The other thing that it does is it makes each of you as property owners I'm not sure exactly how to describe it, but it deputizes. There's a provision in here that requires each of you to, as property owners, to investigate and report a violation. So all of a sudden, somehow y'all are deputized or somehow made an employee or an agent to the county to enforce this. I mean, we can go through this, line by line, but the whole thing is covered with issues and problems like that. So suffice it to say is that, there are certain parts of this ordinance that they make sense, but the problem with it is that is already covered under other statutes or ordinances that the county already has. If you have somebody that is making loud noise, there's already a noise ordinance. If you have a person that is being a nuisance, there's already a nuisance ordinance. And so what's not illegal in this ordinance is redundant and already taken care of by other things. If you're looking for the tax revenue, I get that, and that makes plenty of sense. There's already a hotel motel tax. And so by the time you strip out everything in this ordinance that is illegal or redundant, there's almost nothing left. And those things that are left are just oppressive costs and obligations of the people who are actually providing this economic benefit to the county, and to the citizens, the property owners of the county. So, I've got a 5-pager probably that can give you a specific line-by-line comment on each of these things, which I'll submit later. But suffice it to say is that I get it when Jerry Hill says that he's got a problem. But the thing is we've got a sheriff's department that can take care of that, and they do. But no sense putting all of this, number one, illegal, or number two, onerous on both the county, from a regulatory standpoint, and the property owners from a property owner standpoint. No sense in putting that in place. Thank you.
Anyone else like to go?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Good morning. My name is Chuck Ross. I represent an individual who owns 3 properties that would be subject to this ordinance if it were passed. And first of all, I appreciate the passion that I've heard from so many people here. And it's important to hear, too, so many of you that have said, we paid our hotel motel tax. That's being taken care of. The people who are doing this are abiding by the ordinance. They're doing what they're supposed to do. My client just stroked a check for hotel motel tax for this month, around $2,000. That will be approximately just under $25,000 this year, in addition to his property taxes that are going to go onto the tax rolls of Greene County. Now, I don't want to harp on anything that's already been said. It's all been said and very well, but there are a couple things that we identified of my client's properties that I think do need to be taken care of and looked at. Mr. Martin was very eloquent in what he said about equity, and those are the 2 things that are standing out as inequitable when I'm looking at in this ordinance. The first one has to do with exclusions and who is excluded from this ordinance. And if you notice under the PUDs and the CPUDs, they are excluded only to the extent that they are rented by the developer, that the developer owns the management company. And in particular, one of the properties my client has is in Reynolds, and in the exact condominium that he owns a unit, there is also one that's owned by the developer. And it would say under this ordinance that that unit isn't subject to the regulations because the developer is managing it, whereas my client would be. Now, any of the reasons listed there, my client still falls under all of the covenants. He's in the secured area. There is security that's available to him just like anyone else. There's no difference other than the fact he's not the developer. And where he'd have to go with the developer, my understanding is he would have to pay them approximately 45% of his rental fee to have them manage it rather than himself. One of the other things there's an issue with is the occupancy limit. From all I can tell, the 12-person limit is an absolutely arbitrary number that's been come up with. It doesn't take into consideration any of the square footage. And for example, one of my client's properties is 12,000 square feet. Okay? If he is limited to 12 people in a 12,000 square foot house, it's going to be a ghost town in there. It's really hard to say it's overcrowded when you may have a 4,000 square foot house that you're allowed to put 12 people in because they have 6 bedrooms. It just doesn't make sense, and it's absolutely arbitrary. Also, I want to add my client has had 0 calls to the sheriff's office. He's not renting property to spring breakers. He's renting to large extended families that want the grandparents to come, that have the family member that has 5 kids, that has 7 kids. That's who they're renting to. That's what it sounds like all these people are renting to, because they own these properties. These aren't huge corporations that are renting out hotel rooms. They're renting out the homes that they bought. My client on 2 of his properties spent $500,000 when he purchased them, which brings in revenue as well as increases the value in Harbor Club, in Reynolds, in these neighborhoods. So I would just ask, piggybacking on what Mr. Schmidt said, that you look at the inequities in this in addition to the illegality, but into any equal protection, and that we have equity across the board. Thank you.
Anyone else like to make any public comments?
I'm Jim Brown. I live in Reynolds, and I think we've heard 3 very interesting points today. The first one about problems being experienced. I'm a victim of that. We've heard about people that try to do right by posting regulations, by policing their own property, by imposing regulations, limiting various activities. That's very positive. The third thing we've heard about is property values and taxes and all that part of it. So to quickly sum it up, again, with the things that I have experienced, I'm concerned about my property values, because if a real estate agent brings a potential buyer in and sees what I see sometimes on a Sunday morning with 12 cars jammed in a driveway, garbage dumped on the front lawn out of a container, cars on the grass, these type things. However, I'm very sensitive to the main thing I've heard today about infringement on personal property and all these things. So I just urge the county to take a close look at this. It puts me in a strange position, and not everything can I call the sheriff about because the car's on a lawn. If it's noise or something, a safety violation, yes, I would call. But a lot of the things that are just nuisance things, I can't be the bad guy and call every time, and then I'm going to get the rap that why are you calling about this piddly thing or that piddly thing. It's very unfortunate that I am faced with a situation whereby the owner of the property doesn't do some of the things that have been brought up, that we try to police our own property. So I would urge the commission to take another look based on all the comments that you've received today, and see if there's a better way to make something more tolerable for some of us that face a real problem and worry about our property values about what somebody's not doing that they should. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name's Thomas Smith. I own a property management company out here and have done so for the last 12 years. I was fortunate enough to work for Reynolds Plantation for 8.5 years prior to that, so I have a little bit of both sides of this. One thing that I've noticed, and I'm not pointing fingers here, but the 2 complaints we've heard have come from those gated communities that are restricted from having to do this. And Jerry, I apologize that your neighbor or whoever it is has no respect for what he does with his house or yours. That's a management problem for him, and that's a governing problem for Port Armor. And in your case, that's a Reynolds Plantation issue. You're in gated communities where you have your own security, and at this point, based on this, they're completely exonerated from anything that goes on in here. For the most part, Byron, for the most part. I have several questions. Dick answered most of them by saying that most of this is illegal, and I would not know that, but that's what Dick does. We have very ambiguous criteria here One of mine that I pulled out, and mind you, I managed 70 properties in the gated community, or in and out of the gated communities in Greene and Putnam County, and we pay hotel taxes in both counties. But the one that caught me uniquely was what determined a designated on-site parking space. I got to tell you, coming from one of those gated communities, we had that problem 20 years ago in one particular area in Marina Cove, where you got twice as many residents as you got parking places. In fact, at the time, the president of the company, Bill Peacher, had to address that. Ernie, I'm sure you're aware of that down there. So when you arbitrarily put things in paper like this, whether it's already addressed somewhere else or you leave these big gaps, you have an awful lot of misinterpretation amongst all of us because we don't have a straight guideline to work with. I'm not saying that it doesn't need to be managed, Jerry, and I'm not saying that there don't need to be rules or some sort of regulations, and I'm not the person to put them in place. I know that we manage 70 properties. I know that I have only been called twice in 12 years, and that was because of trouble at the security gate. And that was just because somebody's name wasn't on a pass. So putting in all of these restrictions, leaving out the larger developments, I just don't see it. I don't see it fair, and I don't see it proper. That's all.
Would anyone else like to make some comments? Just a second, somebody's coming up.
My name is Chelsea Page. I'm an airline pilot. I'm a property owner, and I had a son 3 years ago, and I was fortunate enough to get a job at Home Vacations and support my family while I was on maternity leave from my job. So I just want to touch on a few things. A lot of it has been said, but I don't think the board is understanding how many jobs are provided because of the vacation rentals. Oconee climate control, air conditioning calls, plumbing calls, all that generates, what is his name? He's running for a position right now, the appliance repair, Joe Bayshore. Lots of money for people in this community to grow this community. And this, if you run out vacation rentals, it all goes away. So I have a young family, and we've thought about leaving several times because there's nothing to do here. But yet, more and more businesses are coming in, and this area is growing, and we're trying to rethink if we should stay, should go, should we rent out our house for masters? So during my time at Home Vacations, we had another meeting with this board, and this seems like a personal problem with one of the board members that they have with one of their neighbors, and as a result, they're putting all these restrictions on everybody in Greene County, but not everybody. The people in the gated communities are exempt. Are they special? Are they more special? Are their tax dollars more important to you than people who live outside a gated community? Is that fair? So the personal property rights, the infringements, the government is overreaching, and I think it is a travesty. And you'll run out a lot of jobs and a lot of businesses because of your personal problem with your neighbor. That's all I have to say.
Good morning. Justin Cullifer, C-U-L-L-I-F-E-R. So just a couple of points to add. I think everyone has summarized everything very nicely this morning, so I'll just make a couple of points. I live in Dunwoody full-time, Dunwoody, Georgia. I'm on an urban redevelopment agency board for the city of Dunwoody, and I am fortunate enough to own a lake house here at Lake Oconee. Now, I bought it last year in 2015. And I too have had to call security about noise out here at the lake. And in fact in Dunwoody too. And each time I've had to call security, it's been because of a permanent resident. It's not been because of a short-term renter. But I promise you, there's a family that is within eyesight of my lake home where I've had to have a heart-to-heart discussion with the owners of that home. It was their grandkids out for a weekend having a big time, and such a big time that we lost some sleep. They were very apologetic, but I wanted to make that point that not all noise issues are with short-term renters. Sometimes they're with us, who are permanent homeowners. That happens. My home is, funny enough, I heard Marina Cove mentioned. My home is in Marina Cove, and it's a duplex. I actually share a wall with a permanent resident. We're there most weekends, and we rent it occasionally, again, to offset some of the fees. I share a wall with Miss Littleton's daughter, in fact. She's a full-time resident there in Marina Cove. She has our cell phone number. So do the other neighbors that are immediately beside us. And they know they can get in touch with us in a moment's notice, be it phone call or text message, and we will take action. In our short-term renters agreement, which we would be happy to share the verbiage if it would be helpful, you can put it on Greene County's website and have people download it and use it as their own if they like, as a template. We have those same restrictions like Ms. Littleton mentioned. The first call to rental security for noise or any other problem, I don't care what it is, results in losing their deposit, which is a minimum of $500. The second call to rental security or to local law enforcement results in an immediate eviction from the property, and we keep their entire rental amount. As you can imagine, that dissuades people from acting up and acting out of order. We haven't had any big issues out of the property. Actually, haven't had any issues out of the property. We can call Kelly and confirm that. There was something in the verbiage that was shared in this proposed ordinance about requiring folks to work with a property management company to have someone on site and available 24 hours a day. We choose to manage it ourselves. We live in Dunwoody. It's a rather short drive. I keep an airplane at Peachtree DeKalb Airport, and I can be here in about 30 minutes. So it's not a big deal to get out here and take care of anything that needs taken care of. And what I love about Greene County and what I love about the lake area is in a short amount of time, we've forged some really strong relationships with vendors and service providers here at the lake. We have a handyman who's on call. He's saved us more than once when a toilet is broken or when the hot water heater stopped heating. He can pop in at a moment's notice. We have great relationships with HouseSmart from the housekeeping perspective. Linda Williams with HouseSmart is on speed dial and on text message constantly. I know a lot of you know her. She's good as gold. But the point is, most of the property owners we know, and ourselves included, have taken good care of our home. And things are working really, really well. We may reach a point where we want to put it with an agency to manage. We know some good ones that we'll call if we get to that point, but right now this is working well for us. We want to just leave things as they are because it's working well. The home that we purchased has been, it was built 22 years ago. And the gentleman we bought it from was the original owner. And he had it in the rental property management program for the duration that he owned the home. And he told us he actually did really well with that program. And so when we purchased it, by that time rentals had moved on and had actually only accepted their newer cottages over at the landings into their rental program. They would not manage it for us. It was too old. Well, it's a fine lake home for us. Certainly our friends and family haven't minded visiting. It may not be the latest, greatest thing, but at some point those new cottages at the landing too will become old properties, and the next new development inside of rentals will be managed by rentals property management. So those people will be in the same situation that we're in today, either self-managing or hiring an agency to do it for us. So at the end of the day, I'm very much against these ordinances. Like the people have said, there are laws already in place for noise. There are neighborhood regulations already in place for garbage and trash that's thrown about, and parking in grass and grassy areas. It usually takes us one phone call and it's taken care of. So let's leave it alone. And that's what I have to say about that. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Quick question. You said they lose their security deposit. Do you post the rules inside the house? Are they communicated to the people before they rent or when they rent? Are they put in a security deposit? And do they sign something that says they acknowledge this?
All of the above. I'll describe our process very briefly, if I may, if that's okay with everyone. The regulations for renting the property are shared with the prospective tenant. before they ever pay us a dollar. They see a template of this short-term rental agreement and take a look at it. When they pay us a deposit, they're required to sign a copy of it and fax it back to us so that we have their signature on the document as well as their driver's license so that we have proof that they are who they say they are. We also know where they live, and we have their information should we need it. And then lastly, we keep a binder in the home that has area information, who to call in case of an emergency, where to go out to eat. But prominent in that binder that's always in the home is a copy of the short-term rental agreement with all of that same information on it. Additionally, a nice thing that Reynolds does is when you drive in, if you don't have a transponder, they print out a paper gate pass so that it shows the dates you're allowed to be on property. On the back of that piece of paper, it has many, if not all, of the same regulations that we're requiring about things like noise after 10 p.m. and how many vehicles can park on the property. So I actually have a paper one in the car from when my transponder wasn't working. I'd be glad to share it. But a lot of that is already well communicated, and that's our process.
So they do sign it?
Yes, they do sign it, absolutely. And we keep, I have Dropbox where we store everything electronically. I could pull up all of them over the past year and print them right now. So we have it. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, ma'am?
My name is Jean Dufort, and I've been chairing the Lake Country Board of Realtors Short-Term Rental Task Force since we started working with the county last year when this came up most recently. And I've got some prepared remarks I'm going to give to you, but I just wanted to go over a couple of things. As I walked in the door, I was hearing about the special interests. And you know, we've heard from a lot of people today. Some of them are professional realtors, some of them member of our boards, some of them property owners. I would say that the special interest we hold most dearly as realtors is the protection of private property rights. And that's really what we see here as the issue. Quiet enjoyment is certainly a property right we all hold dear. There is no excuse for being an ugly neighbor, whether you're an owner ugly neighbor or a family member ugly neighbor or a rental ugly neighbor. And you've heard testimony from several owners who have good controls in place and managers who have good controls in place to make sure. I think our problem is the same problem we have in all other issues of the county, is there's just some bad actors around. And our focus, what we've communicated to Byron and the county throughout this process, is we support a focus on heightened enforcement of nuisance rules and nuisance enforcement. No one wants bad neighbors. But we also want to protect the right of our owners to do what they want. Here's the problems we see, or some of the main problems we see in this ordinance. The creation of different classes of ownership is just plain a real problem. If you own a property in a gated community, there is no basis, we don't think, Dick's the lawyer, under the law to treat owners who choose to place their property with a professional management company owned by the developer differently than owners who choose to self-manage or put it with a private owner. That's just silly. The things cited as the reason for the preference for the developers are available to all the private owners. And you've heard testimony about the payment of the hotel motel tax. A separate class of owners is really a non-starter for us. The noise standards are very, very vague. You can hear me in the back of the room, that's 25 feet. That noise creates a potential problem. That's an arbitrary standard. This requirement of owners or representatives to be physically present on the property in as little as 30 minutes on being called, really? What other enforcement rule do you have in the county about any problem that requires somebody to show up? You know, if you got a kid acting out, do their parents have to be there within 30 minutes if called, or they're subject to fines? That just seems kind of crazy. The license to offer short-term rentals is not transferable on sale. This is really important. The realtors in the room who sell properties, I closed on a property just a month ago to some folks who are using it primarily for their personal benefit. They're actually here this weekend with other friends because their primary home is in Beaufort, South Carolina. And their son lives in Atlanta, but they're also using it for short-term rental, and they're experienced at that. when they go to sell this property, if they ever choose to sell this property, the history of rental will be an important part of the economic value of that property. And so uncertainty with whether the new owner can or cannot qualify is a big deal to the value and the liquidity of the property. That's a problem. The 60-day implementation time period, I'm glad somebody at least thought we shouldn't just make this thing apply instantly upon passing, but 60 days is not realistic. You know, if you got a rental property, raise your hand if you ever rent more than 60 days out. There are contracts in place that have been committed to that were legally binding, contracts under the law that would, become a real question if this thing was enacted as written. And then the visitor clause. I'm going to step aside. This is personal for me. I have 6 brothers and sisters. Under this law, if my grandparents had rented a vacation rental in Greene County, my family couldn't come and visit them for the day. I think that's just kind of strange, actually. So we urge the commissioners to table this proposal. We'll commit the resources of the Lake Country Board of Realtors, our counsel, Dick. We've got some good resources at state and national. I'm personally working with the state Board of Realtors on a statewide look at this issue. We understand it's an issue, and communities have an interest in ensuring the peace and quiet, but we'll commit our resources to work with Greene County to create a model ordinance. Wouldn't it be wonderful if instead of having an ordinance that has so many problems, Greene County had the absolute best ordinance in the state of Georgia? Wouldn't that be a good idea? So let's work together towards that. And thank you for the time you spent working with us so far, and we look forward to working with you in the future on this.
My name is Rhonda Smith, and I'm a realtor with Algen Realty. But for just a moment, I'm going to take my realtor hat off. And I'm going to talk to you as a daughter of my mother who lives in a gated community. And she's a widow. She became a widow since moving into the gated community. And she lives on a street where she's primarily maybe one of 3 other widow ladies that live on her street. And one of the things that I can tell you is that two houses next door to her are full-time residents. They never rent their houses out, but they're vacant because they live in Atlanta and they live in another area. Those 2 houses need attention, okay? Because they don't rent them out, they are never there, and she's basically on the street by herself on both sides. However, the houses that are all along the streets that are rentals, are VRBOs, are immaculate because the owners are on board. They've got their thumb and finger on the pulse of that home. They're always maintained. They always look fantastic because they're getting ready for their rentals. They're always there. And those houses are meticulous. Now, she's never had a problem. She's never felt unsafe, and neither have her other neighbors, widow ladies, who are on that street that are there's maybe 3 ladies that live full-time on this one street. Now, one of the other things that I can tell you, my mother's a part of a very large group of retired widow ladies here at Lake Oconee. And you all remember when Lake Oconee was very depressed, and these ladies would want to go places to eat or hang out or whatever without having to drive to Atlanta because they're older. They don't want to get in their car and drive far. They don't feel safe doing that. There was not a lot of places for them to go because they were boarded up. Now, we're beginning to be able to see an increase in our activity, our business. Things are healthy out here right now. And as a retiree, and the reason I'm addressing this is because I know that's an issue and it's a concern for retirees. But what we're doing by eliminating VRBO in this community is that we're handing over our quality of life for retirees to another county. That's exactly what we're doing. Because we have so many retirees here, we do,
But when we're allowing tax dollars and money, I mean, because here's what's happening. You're getting VRBO people coming into our town from other counties, and they're bringing our money with them. And if we disregard this, we're letting them keep their money and taking it somewhere else. Therefore, we're handing over our quality of life, not only for retirees, but for current homeowners, to someone else. And I just urge you to reconsider what that means for the quality of life for families such as my mother, because I want her to continue living here because it is safe, it is convenient. She can get in her car when she's 90 and drive and never feel intimidated by, the big cities, and live out her life here because it's quality. And so that's, all I have to say about that.
Would anyone else like to speak?
I just have a question, and I was hoping that somebody would answer this, but in 92212 it says, the county staff, including the sheriff's office, has responded to numerous complaints involving excessive noise, disorderly conduct, and overcrowding. Can you tell me how many complaints they've responded to as it pertains to VRBO?
I mean, like I said, I'm not taking questions, but I can relay that. I'll write it down that it's a concern of yours, the basis for that.
I also have one other thing since they brought up Marina Cove. I'm also a property owner in Marina Cove, and I'd like to know if the county's looking at putting restrictions on parking. What kind of restrictions are you going to put on property owners that don't follow with the parking? Because living there, we have 2 parking spaces. I have 5 people in my family. They all drive cars. Many weekends do we go down to Marina Cove and we can't even park in our own parking spot. So if you're going to inflict and enforce the rule of parking, I'd like to know what you're going to enforce for property owners that do not follow compliance with parking spots. And I'm glad somebody brought up Marina Cove because that's a serious issue. We have more issues with homeowners in Marina Cove than we do with vacation rentals. And thank goodness we have vacation rentals there because we're where the permanent residents park.
Okay. Does anybody else have any other public comments?
My name is Mark Schulz. I've only lived in Greene County for about a year now. We just moved in last year and we built a house in Harbor Club. I just want to really make 2 points, and it's been an interesting experience listening to everybody's observations here. We have a gentleman's meeting on Tuesdays and Thursdays in Harbor Club, and we get a cross-section, although obviously nobody gets everybody to come to a meeting like that. And we are, in fact, concerned about the places in Harbor Club that don't manage their property well, and I think probably we need to do something to fix that. But we, in Harbor Club, don't believe we should have any kind of exception or exclusion. My translation of paragraph 922.2.1 should say that this provision applies to everybody within the unincorporated area of Greene County, therefore making this fair and equitable above and beyond everybody. The other thing that I would say is that although I've only been here a year, I lived in Morrow, Georgia for many years, and I had a condo there. And as a matter of fact, I was the president of the association. And I will tell you that you also have to be careful about the number of rentals you have, because we, in that area, got to the point that we had so many rentals that the banks would no longer finance the homes that we were living in. So I applaud the concern that real estate people have, but you can also go overboard. I don't know that we would ever go that far, but we do have to be careful about it, and I would just warn us of that possibility. Yes?
When you have full-time, when it's a full-time rental, it affects the property. If there's a condo section and it's full-time.
Right, and I understand that.
VRBO or part-time rentals have
Right.
nothing to do with.
But that's why I think you need to be careful about how you do the regulation in order to make sure that some of it's protected.
Okay, thanks, Norm. Does anyone else have any other public comments?
My name is Lee Sims. I'm a local maintenance manager for a rental property in the area, and my sole family income is based off of maintenance work and related jobs that I do in rental property. And if this were to pass, a lot of my clients would have to sell their homes or go out of the rental business. It would definitely put me out of business in what I do on a daily basis. I don't currently own any property inside Greene County. I did own property in Reynolds Landing at one time, but right now I live in Putnam County, but every property I have, I'm the person that is on call. If something happens there, I am the person that responds within 30 minutes, if need be. And the whole situation of the noise and all that, that's ridiculous, because like the air conditioners, this, that, and the other, and it doesn't make sense to me. And the part of the regulation that really doesn't make sense is the 10 years history. There's nobody that can present 10 years rental history except for Reynolds Company that has been doing this for over 10 years. That part of is just ridiculous, but I'm here just to state that the people that don't own these properties, that work for these people, and their sole source of income comes from these rental properties, is the people that will be putting out of work. Because I know I got several people here I know do similar work that I do, and if they lose that part of their business, I mean, their whole family's going to suffer. And it's just, I hate to see that happen. I really hope this doesn't pass.
Would anyone else like to make some public comments?
I have one other question I forgot to ask. I'm just curious if the county can enlighten us. Does rentals vacation, are they paying the county any money to be exempt from these rules? Because I'm just curious how they became exempt.
All right, I'll relay that. Is there any other questions someone would like to pose, or comments, not questions, comments that you'd like to relate to the board? If that's the end of it, like I mentioned, by all means, grab a business card, email me if you would like to have a link to the video.
Can you clarify one thing?
When it's coming up before the board?
Yeah. What's
Can you
coming up
tell us
before?
when this is next coming up?
I believe it's on their agenda to consider this Thursday, the 13th, at 5 p.m.
And you'll have all these comments out before then?
Yes. Yeah.
Do they have to listen, or is it optional for them to listen to the recording?
I mean, I can't make them do anything. Okay. But I mean, I'm certainly